Hello fellow leggers, thank you very much for joining us once again in London's West End, where we are visiting the Ambassadors Theatre.
And we are seeing a musical with, I think, maybe the longest name in history ever, but definitely the longest name in West End right
recently?
now.
Okay.
And that is Sue Townsend, The Secret Diary of Adrian Mole, aged 13 3/4, the musical. Just when you thought it was safe to go back in the water, the musical.
So stick around to hear all of our thoughts.
Yeah, find out how many stars and whether it's break a leg or leg it.
Now, we have actually seen this piece before, not this production.
Yes.
Or is it
Sort
same
of.
director?
Yeah, we'll get on to that in a minute. But before we do, you may know that this musical is based on the beloved 1982 novel of the same name by the late Sue Townsend, which spawned 7 sequels.
Did well.
TV adaptations. It's actually had a stage adaptation before as a play in the late 80s.
I remember, I've done
Headed
excerpts
out
of
onto
it.
town, have you?
Yeah,
so
it was an audition
well.
staple, some of those monologues that he has.
Now, this musical stage adaptation has book music and lyrics by the writing team Pippa Cleary and Jake Brunger, and had its UK premiere at the Curve Theatre Leicester back in 2015, which we saw.
Which is when we saw it.
But we weren't the leggers then.
We weren't
so we
the
had
leggers
no
then.
opinion on it.
The leggers hadn't been
all.
born.
Hadn't been born. Well, it was resurrected actually, and then it had its London debut in a slightly altered production between the Curve and the Meniere Chocolate Factory in 2017, and that altered production has now transferred into the West End here at the Ambassadors. So it's been on quite the journey, really.
Okay.
Now, each production has been directed by the same director, and that's Luke Sheppard.
Yeah.
His other credits include Peter and the Starcatcher at the Northampton Derngate, yes, which we saw and we have a review for. Casa Valentina at the Southwark Playhouse, which again we saw before we were leggers.
Before we were
loved
born.
That.
We did,
it was
we enjoyed
great.
it.
In the Heights, which was at the Southwark and then transferred
to the King's Cross Theatre.
And was nominated for a load of Olivier Awards.
Which was before we were leggers again.
And he's got the upcoming brand new musical And Juliet, which is a alternative reality sequel to Romeo and Juliet, but with modern pop songs.
Going into the Shaftesbury.
Where everything runs and runs when it's at the Shaftesbury, doesn't it? Lasts a long time.
We're not saying
there,
it's a doomed theatre, but we're not going to judge.
No,
I'm looking forward to it, and Juliet.
And
anyway, we're here to see this, so, you know.
Now, if you don't know, Adrian Mole is the story of a 13-year-old intellectual, title character who's growing up in 1980s Leicester, and in the talented cast for this is Rosemary Ash as Grandma, John Hopkins as Mr. Lucas, and Andrew Langtry as George. 2 hours and 20, including a 20-minute interval. So stick around to find out about our 30-second interval breakdown.
And to the end to hear our thoughts and how many stars. It's the interval, which means that it's time for the Break and Leggers 30-second interval breakdown.
So, what do you think so far?
I think it's quite fun. It's really silly. I'm enjoying it quite a lot. It knows itself, and I am lolling and smiling from ear to ear. What a talented cast, and boy, are they doing a lot. How about you?
I think it's brilliant. I just think it's so innovatively told, this story. The lyrics are so witty and catchy that I am having an absolute ball. I just think it's got mass appeal. It knows its audience, and it knows its audience is wide.
We've come to the end of, what is the title? What is this
can we
epic
just
title?
call it Adrian Mole the Musical rather than Sue Townsend, The Secret Diary of Adrian Mole the Musical, aged 13 3/4, because otherwise we're just going to, this will be the longest review ever.
It will be, and already we have to say thank you very much to London Box Office.
A massive thank you. Now, London Box Office sell tickets across the West End for shows like this one, right through to your old standards, your Phantom of the Operas, your Wicked.
Les Miserables.
They do some great deals from time to time on a variety of shows, and they have gifted us the tickets tonight. So thank you, LBO. Glad to be here.
Thank you very much. And they also have reviews, independent reviews, which you'll also find this review on there as well.
And you'll know that they're independent because they sent us to see Our Town, and we thought it was awful.
It was bad.
It was bad. So,
anyway, but what did we think of this?
Adrian Mole the Musical. I've got to say, it's bloody brilliant. It literally is some of the best, wittiest, original music just joyous delight of a British musical. It feels like a musical for the Brexit age, but in a good way, like in a real good way, like nostalgic.
It's funny that you say British musical, because I think it's very British, and when there's so much good stuff, we've just had the Tony Awards coming out of Broadway. I feel as if this goes, no, we know what we're doing. We can come up with some really bright, flashy, glitzy, clever, beautifully lyrically written music.
What's that got to do with the Tony Awards? I'm just trying to understand.
Well, in that there's some great stuff coming out of Broadway. You said this is British,
yes,
and I feel as if this is reclaiming British.
In a similar way
we
that
can do
Six has done, do you mean?
Yeah,
in saying that we make it our own. I mean, we are.
Sometimes I feel as if are we living up to the standard of musicals between the UK and
No,
New
you're
York?
all wrong. British musicals set the bar.
Do you think?
We set the bar way back when. The Americans might have improved on it, but we set that standard.
Controversial.
To begin with.
This isn't Anybody Have a Map.
It is Anybody Have a Map.
Talking of which, we just talked about in our recent Anybody Have a Map applause, and I thought the applause points in this show were bang on. It wasn't after every number.
Yeah.
They rode the wave, we rode the crest, and then they buttoned a number, and we as an audience then
we're putty in their hands,
appreciated.
weren't we?
Yeah.
And that's good direction. So let's talk a little bit about the direction by Luke Sheppard. I just think it's bold and it's brash, and these characters are so big. He hasn't shied away from it, and it's no wonder there's a foreword in the programme by David Walliams, because I mean this is inspiring stuff on Sue Townsend's writing, isn't it?
It does.
It's inspired a whole generation of writers to write children's material, young people's material. And what I would say that Luke has understood here in the direction and how to sell the jokes is he's not shied away from the more controversial stuff, and he's let that sort of be quite bold and sexy at times, and quite adult at times as well in some of the the mannerisms and the characterisation of the people.
I think you're dealing with a real risque age, really. If you're thinking about those 13, 14 teenagers, that's when you're discovering your body. The naivety of the world is gone. Your eyes are beginning to be open to life, and I think it taps into that. It's really creative and really pacey.
Yeah.
This cast of 10, boy, do they work. I hope they get push and pull, because the set has been moved so slickly from here, from this cupboard, from this door.
They are busy people. They are earning they're earning it here, aren't they?
And as such, it has real pace and moves along at such a pace. And it's the story we know, the book Adrian Mole, but it's been brought to life. And I think that comes from almost going back to the writing, but also brought to life in its creativity of direction.
Let's talk about the songs. Let's talk about Jake Brunger and Pippa Cleary's book, music and lyrics, particularly the music and lyrics. I think there are some of the best British musical theatre numbers in this piece than I've seen in the past 10 years.
Really?
I think there's 3 numbers in this which should become standards in cabaret.
Which ones were they? Come on, let me see if I agree. You don't have to remember the names. I guess just remember what was the themes. Like they have these really good, big, glitzy numbers, but then they bring it right down, because there's these 2 bits where they're talking about the mother of Adrian Mole and the mother of
I think of
the Pauline, I think it is, and they're singing the same lyric about my son, and an attacking song. But boy, is it fantastically written.
How Could You, sang by Grandma and Pauline.
Yes,
it's an argument song. It's an anger song, and it's such a bloody good number that it's a female duet, which are fairly rare. But this should enter standards for female duets.
Is that one of them?
That's
that you're
one
thinking?
of them. Absolutely.
There's also a brilliant 11 o'clock number where they do a nativity, which I think you've just got to see it. It's brilliant. It is gold.
It is absolute stage gold in its sort of clever staging, its comedy setup, and the way that story is told is just brilliant. Absolutely enjoyed it.
I've got to say, is there a soundtrack?
There will be.
Is there a cast recording?
Yeah, so
this?
the Meniere cast recorded the numbers.
Okay,
some of them are here in this production, and that's about to be released in line with this West End transfer.
Well, there we are. I'd say this is definitely a cast recording to listen to, because I think there is some cracking stuff in there.
Absolutely.
Some really nice duet stuff.
Also, I'd like to mention, in terms of production team, Rebecca Howell for choreography.
How could we not?
Yeah.
Because it's really creative, and yet cast appropriate, but not to the cast appropriate where the standard's been lowered.
Because the ages are anything from
diverse
14 to
right up
80 years of age, and they're all being expected to do exactly the same thing.
Yeah, and they do, and they live it. Character driven.
Yeah, do you know what? Actually, there's a real sort of ensemble feel to the choreography. I don't know how to explain that better, but the way that they move in unison and the way that they interact with one another feels like it could only work if they were all doing what they do so well.
Yes, I agree. I did
That was
brilliant
great.
choreography. It matched really well the dynamic of the piece.
Also loved the stage design by Tom Rogers. Just thought it was a beautiful, bright, bold, bubbly set.
It was appropriate. It
Yep.
suited the mood. Lovely use of lighting. We're
Howard
going to be
Hudson
throwing
on
everybody in
lighting.
here, aren't we?
Yeah, because it's just a great piece. It's a
Works
great
really well.
example of a fantastically strong team all coming together and delivering their A game, bringing their A game. They've bought it here, guys.
Okay,
They
so
really
we
have.
talk about cast.
Let's talk about cast.
The Adrian Mole specifically, because it's child actors, there's I think 3 of
There's
them.
4 of them,
Is there
actually.
4 of them? So
Yeah.
there's none of them in repertoire
Yeah.
cast.
So we think tonight we got Michael Hawkins in the role of Adrian.
My God, is this possibly one of the toughest tracks? You know,
For a
Billy
child.
Elliot has been up there as
Yeah.
one of the toughest tracks. This is almost like a polar opposite because Billy Elliot, I see him as quite cool. He's got the talent. He's technically a brilliant dancer, whereas Adrian
Adrian's a
Mole is a
geek.
geek. He's like awkward,
Yeah.
I just love that they're polar opposites. But boy, is he busy!
Yeah, he is
I was
busy.
thinking at one point, how do you learn this? How do you know this? You don't leave the stage.
Yeah, he doesn't leave the stage, and I would have a problem with carrying that now, never mind as a kid.
Yes.
But wow, I mean,
Such
the way
energy.
that character has to push the whole story along.
Yep.
I think that once they tighten this up, because we're seeing it quite early,
We are.
it's going to be absolutely brilliant. Also, Matilda Hopkins as Pandora,
Yeah.
the love interest for, I mean, she's played young Eponine in Les Mis. I mean, she's been around, she really has.
I mean,
And she
she is,
is
yeah.
fantastic, absolutely
They
brilliant.
just have really good stuff to work with in
move
terms
on.
of the numbers.
Oh, I
and
know there was
everything.
another child actor that you were a big fan of this evening as well.
Was
who
that
I
the
can't
who
find.
played Barry?
Yes.
Yes, I'm not sure who it was, but the character Barry is
So
a
it
geniusly
would have been
witty
either
Barry.
Aaron
Barry.
Shaw, Charlie Strip, Jack Gale, or Kobe Watson. We'll do a bit of research and hopefully find a picture of who it was that we had. But I think,
Genius casting.
do you know what? Like almost sort of like Olivier Worthy.
Do you think?
Like as that character, but all those actors nominated. If they play it as well as they play that tonight, that's the piece you want. You know, I always say there's always a piece in a show that you want, but it's never the lead.
Yes.
That's the piece
As
you-
in,
that's-
that's the
that's
part
the
you
part.
want. That's
That's
the
the
part.
part.
Barry is a kind of real hooligan. He's the bully, the one that everybody is scared of. However, the casting, the one we saw,
Yeah,
just
the actor that we saw.
the actor we saw was tiny.
Yeah, he's
the
like petite,
shortest little petite thing.
unassuming, and
Yeah.
just because of that, it's
So
absolutely hilarious.
cute, but then getting up in people's faces, and it was hilarious.
Genius casting.
Genius
absolute
casting,
Genius casting.
and then genius casting in the visual because of the cast of adults also play the children and cross gender as well. So it's brilliant. I'm just howling.
I don't think we're doing it justice, but let's
I
move
don't
on
think
to
we are.
some
We need
of.
to get going because otherwise we're going to be here all night.
We
So
will.
let's move it on.
Some of the adult actors, John Hopkins in the role as Mr. Lucas and Mr. Scruton.
Is
He
it Scruton,
is.
Scroton?
Do you know what? Ultimately,
Brilliant.
ultimately menacing and sort of a little bit threatening as one character, and then a sex bomb as
Is
the
that
other.
how you're going to describe it?
He was
so,
a sex
so smooth,
bomb.
but so funny. His comic timing and just some of the little
A
things.
masterclass.
It was a masterclass in comedy. Some of the things he was doing comedy-wise, so
Yeah.
subtle and underplayed, but well placed,
Yeah.
and had the audience howling.
I'm going to give him a Break a Leggers nomination.
What a 2019 Break a
For
Leggers
Best
nomination!
Actor in a Musical for John Hopkins as Mr. Lucas and Mr. Scruton. I think for that performance, him and Barry alone are worth coming to see.
Him and
Like,
Barry.
I mean, everyone
alone.
else was great, but those pair,
That part,
bloody,
yeah.
the comedy,
Yeah,
it's just the
hilarious.
comedy of it all.
Okay,
Loved
well
it.
deserved. You got my back in.
Amy Ellen Richardson as Pauline.
Thought she was
Literally
great.
just come out of Sweet Charity at the Donmar,
I was
straight
thinking
into
that.
this.
I think she must have been rehearsing while she was on Sweet Charity.
She must be knackered.
She must have been acting. She's great. She's a lovely singing voice. Carried the role really well.
Yep.
Nice stuff to play with.
Now, Lara Denning as Miss Elf and Doreen Slater. Now, I do remember that when we saw this at the Curve, we had Amy Booth Steele in that role.
And she was great.
Who has gone on to great things with her ukulele, up
She
at the
has.
Fringe soon. And I thought in my head, no one's going to be as good as Amy. Like, I did come in with a bit of a preconceived idea. I was wrong. I'm so sorry.
I've got to
Laura
say,
Denning was absolutely phenomenal, and she probably gets the character that are the most. She gets two characters, and they are so opposite to one another. She gets the fearful, duddering old bimbo, and she also gets the sex kitten, goddess, power woman, dominatrix role.
Yes,
and she was, my God, was that just the way that she flipped on the dime? Even in the bows, she switched it on.
Did she?
It was one of the best bows I've ever seen.
Okay, well, as myself, I thought she was too much, a bit over the top.
Okay.
But vocally fantastic until she came on as Doreen Slater, and then I got it. I got how the both of them had to be completely different, and it worked. And I thought, yes. Fantastic performance.
Great
Loved it.
performance.
Great character.
By Andrew Langtry as George. I want to stop and talk about Ian Talbot, OBE, for a minute, because Ian is
usually a director.
He directed Eugenius.
He did, he was resident director, I believe, over at the Regent's Park Open Air Theatre for a long time. He's directed many of a UK tour, included one of mine going back a while ago. So it's a bit strange to see him now coming out of that directorial role into a performance role. But he was great. The way he handled the texts, there was one part where he was playing Burt Baxter. Is it Burt Baxter?
Yeah, Burt.
And it was hilarious.
Yeah.
Just this grumpy old guy. Every single line had the audience creasing in their seats.
Yeah, absolutely. Loved
the delivery was great.
And last but not least, let's talk about Rosemary Ash as Grandma. Now, Rosemary Ash is a bit of a legend.
She's original Carlotta in Phantom of the Opera.
And she had some of those operatic moments, didn't she?
did.
She still has that.
But she's
high soprano.
But she's, also really grounded,
Is it a
and she
soprano?
gives it. It is a soprano.
She's
she
wonderful.
can go right up there. Also in The Witches of Eastwick, she played like the busy and nosy neighbour who was in charge of all the neighbours, and she was fantastic in that.
Do you know what I felt she was having
great.
here? I felt like she was having a lot of fun because she gets to play a schoolgirl, and then she's the hard-nosed grandma character, and I just think I could tell how much she was enjoying it, and I also felt completely comfortable in her hands because she's a woman that absolutely just exudes experience.
I think that's
Loved
the
her.
joy for the whole of the cast, is they do get to play multiple parts. They get to have fun. And there are times when I saw them kind of like almost thinking, smiling to
Do
each
you
other.
think we might get some corpsing?
We got it. Slightly, not corpsing that they lost it, but a bit like, because
We're
this
having a
is
good time
still
now.
quite early on, so I think they're still finding, the company are still finding where the laughs are, and it's funny.
Yeah.
And I think they're enjoying it too.
It's good to watch. I feel honoured to have seen it at this stage because we're seeing it sort of become
blooming.
It is
Blossoming.
blooming. And blooming brilliant it is. So let's wrap it up.
Well, I guess you're probably wondering how many stars
Have I
we are
got to
going
say
to
it again?
give Sue Townsend,
The Secret Diary of Adrian Mole, aged 13 3/4, the musical,
playing here
at the Ambassadors Theatre
in
where
London's
you are.
West End.
We are going to give 4
stars!
Yeah, it's just great as a
It's
British
really good.
new musical. It's not been around for long and it's finally come to the West End, and it's worth a look for anyone aged from 12 to 212.
I think it's got
212.
real age reach. Yeah, I think for your teens it'll be great, and for your adults it'll be great. I think even the little leggers would really enjoy this.
They would get it on a different level because it's an innuendo-laden show.
and it
There's
moves.
much of what would go over their heads, I think. And
Like a good Pixar.
Like a good Pixar film. It works on so many levels, and that's what I'm saying about Luke Sheppard here. Has directed it in such a way and has got hold of the source material and understood it, is that its reach is wide. I think this is a lot of people it will appeal to.
And
which is
Adrian
great.
Mole has been done before, like you say, but this is different.
Yeah.
They've really fleshed this out and reimagined and reinvented and brought real comedy, and yet still given the right bits of the real weight.
Set in the 80s, but feels like it's for today.
And at times I was thinking, is this now or is this the 80s? It's very much the 80s, but there's just some elements that I felt were more seated now in terms of the company and the classroom. But hey, that's just me.
That's just what I think as well. But what do you
I think.
think? We'd love to hear
Yeah.
from you. Let us know if you've seen Adrian Mole in any of its incarnations,
Reincarnations, incarnations,
We're the Breaker
versions,
Lakers.
and we'll catch you again soon.
Bye.